Hello, my name is Amit Tata and I will be your instructor for MIS310, Introduction to Database Management. In this video, I'd like to give you a high-level overview of the content of this course. It has nothing to do with the syllabus or any administrative details. Rather, it tries to give you a high-level roadmap of the content of the course so that you have some idea of where we are headed and what we're doing and why we are doing things in this course. So the context that I have chosen is one with which I think we're all familiar. All of us at some point or the other has made an online booking for an airline reservation, and that's the context I'm choosing. So this is me or you sitting in front of your laptop trying to book a flight. And I've just picked Expedia at random just as an example of what you might be seeing on the screen. So the information that you're seeing on the screen is presented to you in a manner that's easily digestible by you and is relevant to the function that you're doing. You're trying to book an airline seat, so the information given to you on the screen is relevant to that. So there is a business context to all of this. And just as an example, what is the kind of information that you see on the screen? You can see there's information on prices for different flights. So in this case, I've chosen my departing city as Frankfurt and the destination as Singapore, and the dates of my travel. And then the system comes back and said, here are different flights that are available to you. And for those flights, it tells you what airline it is, the price of the flights and so forth. So you all have a sense of the kind of information that you see on the screen. And that is relevant to your business function that you're trying to execute. But for this course, for purposes of this course, what I'd like for you to think about is a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes. So behind the laptop, what goes on. And very quickly, I think you would easily understand that there are different kinds of data that are there behind the scenes that somehow come together to produce the information that you see on the screen. So what are those different kinds of data that might be available, that would be available behind the screen that you're looking at? Obviously, there'd be customer data. So when you make your booking, the system would need to know about something about yourself, your name, your date of birth, your passport if you're doing information in international travel, if you have a frequent flyer status with any of the airlines and so forth. So various types of information about you, the passenger, the customer. And of course, there would have to be flight data and route data. Route data is, what kind of, which airlines are flying between city A and city B at what times, what type of prices do they have. And then, of course, there is flight data that is on a particular day, which particular flight is available from which particular airline and so forth. And then if you dig a little deeper, there's even more information behind the scenes that would be necessary. For example, one of the things that you do once you select your flight and you're happy with the price and so forth, and you proceed with the reservation, one of the things that you do is you make a seat selection. Obviously, you can't, the system can't provide you the necessary information unless it knows what kind of aircraft is flying on that particular route. So somewhere in there has to be information about aircraft. Is it an Airbus 320? Is it an Airbus 350? Is it a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, so forth? And depending on which airline, what type of aircraft, the seat configuration are different and so forth. So the point that I'm trying to get across is what you as the end user see on the screen is a conglomeration, or rather an integration of data of different kinds behind the scenes. So you have customer, as examples here, we have customer data, flight data, route data, and aircraft data, and so forth. So clearly, there are different kinds of data, and you cannot store this in a haphazard manner. So this data has to be structured in some way. Otherwise, we would not be able to find the flight information that we want. We wouldn't be able to, later on, let's say 2 weeks down the road, you want to go in and change your flight date. Obviously, if the system can't find you as a customer, then that's bad news. So the data that's behind the scenes that is feeding into the screen that you see, the data has to be organized in a certain way, and it has to be organized in a way that makes it easy to retrieve the data quickly and also to make changes to it. If I want to make changes to a reservation, I should be able to get to that information quickly and make the changes that I need. So the data behind the scenes has to be organized, and the key word there is organized, structure. Okay, now I'll give you a very simple example. Nowadays nobody uses a telephone directory, but let's say you have a telephone directory and you have individuals listed, sorted by their last name. In that case, if you know a person's name, it is easy to find their telephone number. But let's say you know a telephone number, but you can't remember the person's full name. It is very hard to look up the same telephone directory if you know the phone number and you're trying to find the name. So there's a very simple example of how structure matters and has a dramatic effect on your ability to retrieve information and work with it. So if you generalize that concept, all this data that you have here about customers, about flights, about routes, aircraft, and so forth has to be structured in a certain way. And a database is nothing but a structured collection of data. Okay? So if you think of a university, it has data on faculty, it has data on students, it has data on courses, and so forth. And all this cannot be structured, cannot be kept in a haphazard manner. It has to be structured in a certain way so that when time comes for business functions, in this case, let's say students registering for a particular course or faculty being assigned to teach a certain course and so forth, that it's relatively easy to get to the information that you need and to make changes that you need to the information. So a database is nothing but a structured collection of data. And one of the things that we're going to study in this course is how to structure a database. Okay, how can we determine that a structure is good? Okay, so structuring of data. So for the initial 1/3 of the course or so is based, it covers tools and techniques that allow you to structure data in a meaningful way that's relevant to the business function that's being executed. Of course, just having the structured data is not enough. You need to be able to create that data set. You need to be able to retrieve that information. For example, if I type in Frankfurt and Singapore, then out of all the route data and all the flight data that's there, the system should be able to pick out only those flights that fly between Frankfurt and Singapore. So you want to be able to retrieve information. 7 days later, when you come in and want to change your flight, let's say reservation, the system should be able to locate you by your customer, by either your name, your reservation number, so forth. So retrieval of information is one operation that you do on the structured data. Another kind of operation that you might want to do is insert new data. So let's say an airline introduces a new flight between Singapore and Frankfurt. It needs to be able to add that information to the database. When you make a reservation for a particular flight, then the system has to insert that booking into the system so that you can come back later and make changes to it, maybe delete it if you change your plans and so forth. So manipulating the database, creating the structure, inserting content, deleting content, changing content. Changing content is very common. If you want to change the dates of your travel, that's changing the date of your reservation. If the prices for a particular flight change, which they do all the time, you're making changes to the database. So in addition to structuring the data, you need to be able to manipulate the data. Manipulation involves things like inserting content, deleting content, and changing content. And all those functions need to be done in order for you as the end user to have a meaningful experience at your school. Okay? So those are the kinds of functions. So in this course, we will learn languages, in particular SQL, that is used to create this structured data and also to manipulate it. Okay. Now you see this object in the middle called the DBMS, Database Management System. That is the software that acts as a go-between between you, the application, the end user who's interacting with the software application, and the actual structured collection of data. So this is the software that allows that knows the language that you can use to create the structured collection of data and to manipulate it. In this course, the particular database management system that we will be using is called SQL Server, rather SQL, and the software is SQL Server. So that's the platform that we will be using. So this is the broad description of the content of this course. A database is nothing but a structured collection of data, and we will be learning techniques on how to structure collections of data, how to determine whether or not the structure is any good, and then we will learn a language called SQL that helps us manipulate the data. Manipulation involves creating the structured collection of data, inserting content, deleting content, and modifying content. So I hope this video gives you a high-level overview of the content of this course, and then gradually with other lessons we will see details and more of the nitty-gritty about how we do these various things in this overall scenario.